So let's go ahead and get started. We started talking yesterday a little bit about mental models, and I will kind of post some of those notes up on and move it for you, so you kind of get a better sense of what your notes look like compared to what we put up on the board. So just start just with a word. Heavenly Father, we thank you for another day. We thank you for keeping us. We thank you for creating a space where we can challenge ourselves, we can challenge our brothers and sisters, so we can learn more about the people you created. We thank you for all the things you've done in our lives to this point, and all the things that you will unfold for us as we continue forward. We thank you in Jesus' name, amen. So I want to start off a little bit with a piece of video, and I'm curious. So what I'd like to do is I'll show the video. Many of you have probably been exposed to the video, but I want you to think in terms of some of the mental models that we've talked about. And we'll talk about some more in just a bit, but as you watch this video, I want you to think about the positives and negatives in this particular video piece, right? So I'll show it. It's coming right off my my Facebook. I do a lot of commenting and whatnot via Facebook. So if stuff pops up, that's because that's what I'm connected to. I'm not like surfing while we're doing class, right? So so I catalog a bunch of stuff using my my Facebook and YouTube.
You think I'm a fussy eater? Well, it's a power play. You want to get me to eat?
Go to that museum on Ellis Island and look at the pictures of all those people who are hanging up there from every part of the world, many of them carrying all their earthly belongings in their two hands, not knowing what this country held for them. Look at the determination in their eyes. People who work not 5 days a week, but 6 or 7 days a week. Not 8 hours a day, but 10, 12, 16 hours a day. No such thing as a minimum wage. They work not for themselves, but for their sons and their daughters, their grandsons and their granddaughters, that they might have an opportunity in this land. That's what America is about. A land of dreams and opportunity. There were other immigrants who came here in the bottom of slave ships, worked even longer, even harder for less. But they too had a dream that one day their sons, daughters, grandsons, granddaughters, great-grandsons, great-granddaughters might pursue prosperity and happiness in this land. And do you know, of all the nations in the world, this the United States of America is the only one big enough, great enough to allow all those people to realize their dream. This is our opportunity to enhance that dream.
Do not want to hear from Samuel Jackson. Do not want to hear.
You must eat the mother.
I don't want to hear from him right now. So if you could, just in groups of two, just groups of two, as you saw that piece, for those of you who saw it, right? What are some positives and negatives that were in that message? Like, what were some good things and some bad things, or what were, yeah. So what were some things that you heard in that short message? Do we need to play it again? No? Yes? No? Okay, cool. So if you can just get in groups of two, just talk with your neighbor a little bit about that particular message. what you hear that was positive, or that was somewhat problematic?
He said that they had dreams too.
Yeah.
So that was Dr. Ben Carson's staff.
That's huge. I need a break from my class. There's just a lot going on. That's like usually what happens though, by like Wednesday, kind of like late class Wednesday, and then the whole class Good Friday, I'm just like checked out.
Cool.
Oh, yeah.
So
many.
So we know that the speaker is
On Monday, Ben Carson drew quick condemnation from civil rights groups for referring to slaves.
So we know that is Secretary of HUD, Housing and Urban Development, speaking to his staff. So as you heard that, or you listened to that, what were some of the things that you thought were some positive aspects of that particular speech? What were some things that were positive in that speech? Yes.
Yeah, he was really open about immigrants, I thought, like just giving them opportunities to be here and to prosper.
Yeah, that it's important that
Yeah.
this particular country has opened its arms to immigrants, and that we were, I think he said, like, we're great enough and big enough, right, for them to realize their dreams. Yes.
He acknowledged a lot of the pain and hardships that they were going through.
He acknowledged a lot of the pains and hardships they were going through. All right, cool. Anything else you thought was a positive or good? Yeah.
Kind of like there's hope, you know.
Yeah, that there's hope, right? So, America is a place of hope. Was there anything that folks found somewhat problematic, or could have seen why other folks things that folks might see problematic? Yeah.
Kind of the definition of immigrants wasn't meant to be immigrants, because they referred to, the slaves as immigrants. So
Yeah.
what does that mean?
Yeah, what is that, how is that problematic? How might that be problematic? Referring to slaves as immigrants.
They're forced to come here without a choice.
Yeah, they're forced to come here without a choice, right? So, two G's, two E's, right? One G, two E's. Okay, good. Same? Same? No, not the same, right? So so we obviously know, a slave is a person kind of in a system, not have a whole lot of choices. But what's the difference between an immigrant and a refugee? Are refugees immigrants? No. I was waiting for that, like, yes, no, they're not. So the verbs associated. So the verb associated with both of these is this idea of immigration, right? So the there's a square, a polygon. It's a square polygon. Polygon. Is it a polygon? Yes. Polygon. Poly meaning what? Many sides, right? So a square is a polygon, right? Is a polygon. But is a pentagon a square? No, it is not, right? Pente meaning 5. So it's a polygon with 5 sides. A square has 4 sides, right? So when we talk about this idea of immigrant and refugee, the activity that refugees are doing may be called an immigrant activity or immigration. But what's the difference between those two concepts? What causes people to move from place to place? Yes?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think immigrant would be someone out of like their free will, or it's a choice, and a refugee is maybe coming from like out of strife or out of fear. So that might be a difference.
Yeah, so one of the things we talk about in terms of right? So we have push and pull factors. Slaves, drag. So they're not even on the push and pull kind of spectrum, right? Immigrants have different kind of push and pull factors than refugees. What are the push and pull factors for immigrants? What is pushing or pulling them to move from one place to another? So it could be freedom, concepts like freedom. What else?
More opportunities.
Yeah, opportunities. Family. Most of those are very either individual or very positive, right? So those push and pull factors, we want a better life. Maybe the life we have sucks, so we're going to move over here because we'll have a better life. Or we want a different life for our kids than what we had, right? So all this kind of stuff. So this idea of immigrant moving, and usually it's around resources. So we're going to a place with more or better resources. The interesting thing is, refugees have the same kinds of push and pull factors, but there's one thing that's different between immigrants and refugees, which is what? What's the difference?
They're in danger.
In danger from what?
What's happening everywhere.
Yep, and typically what 3-letter word does that? War. Right? So war is the greatest push factor, or the pull factor that propels people to move from one space to another. They're seeking all of these things too, just like immigrants, but this nature of war is very different. Because the other part is immigrants usually go through a particular kind of process before they get to another place. So, I fill out a visa, I fill out a form, I go through, some kind of formalized process, where refugees from war go to camps, right? They go to camps until, and depending on what country it is, some countries do lotteries. So, you're lucky to get your name pulled out, and then you get to go to that country. Some cases, countries have relationships with the government, and they say we'll take so many people from those camps, and we'll bring them into our country, where people don't have a choice, right? So it's funny. I have a Hmong friend whose parents were sent to. It is so funny. So her parents were sent to France, right? So here we have this Hmong woman, ethnically Hmong woman, with the name of Boku Vang, and Boku is spelled like the Hmong would spell Boku, right? But what does Boku mean in French? Where's the Boku? No French students in here learning to French? Not even in high school? No? What'd you take in high school? What language? Spanish. Okay, cool. All right, well, the whole joke is just like ruined because nobody speaks French. But the idea is that, so they go through concentration camps, right? What's that? Thank you. Boku. So her name is, thank you, and Hmong spelling. So kind of interesting. So we have that. So part of that statement that he said doesn't paint the full picture, right? As a matter of fact, it minimizes this idea of how impactful slavery was, and slavery was extremely impactful. And the funny thing is, again, people will say, I didn't have anything to do with it. Why are we still talking about this? This has nothing to do with me, but it has everything to do with all of us. Right? It has everything to do with all of us. So there's that. So I want to show a video, and some of you may have seen this before. So pardon me if some of your teachers have stolen my material. No, that's too much roids right there. I'm trying to get past this commercial.
How mad do you get when you see something wrong taking place? Let's take another look at what happens when our innocent bystanders reach the boiling point. Deep in the heart of Texas, at this little roadside bakery, bigotry is being served with a coffee and bagels.
Sir, I have a question.
No, ma'am. We don't serve Muslims here.
I'm sorry?
This is America. We're at war with your people.
I don't know what you think I am. Trying to get an asshole.
Well, you're a terrorist is what you are. So,
excuse me?
you gotta take your business elsewhere. We don't serve your kind.
The other customers at this bakery near Waco seem to hear everything, but they barely look at the Muslim woman, even when the language is tough to take.
Get back on the camel and go back wherever you came from.
Sir, I'm an American. I was born and raised.
No, you're not. Americans don't wear towels on their head.
Muslim Americans say these are words they hear all the time in all parts of the country. But here at the bakery, what the customers don't know is that this Muslim woman and the man behind the counter are actors. The bakery is working with us, all part of a primetime hidden camera experiment on prejudice and patriotism.
Please take your business elsewhere. Am I asking too much?
When no one even tries to help her, she makes a direct appeal.
Sir, would you not order me an apple strudel? That's why I'm here. I can give you the money. I know how.
Please no, sir. I'm not gonna let you go.
But when he gives her the cold shoulder, she finally just leaves.
You could have helped her out. You could have spoken up. Why not? Make speak up for her? Well, if he tried to do some harm to her or something, then I would have.
But why not try to set him straight?
I really think this person that owns his own business should be able to say things, say, self-made.
She's not American.
Others seem to agree with our actor as to who's an American and who's not. Is it all based on the way we look?
I'm an American citizen. I just would like an apple strudel, please.
Well, I'm sorry. Then why don't you dress like an American? You're
this
so
is
American.
for religious purposes, sir, and I don't think you have any right to say anything.
So I'm religious. I don't wear, Halloween costumes around. I mean, am I wrong here, sir?
Not me.
I run my business the way I want to run it.
That's right. Don't come in here with that confused skirt on.
This customer is adamant, but the man behind the counter is doing the right thing.
I'm ready for you.
But the fact is, it's against the law to deny service to someone based on their race or religion.
My name is John Quinones, and I'm with ABC News. What did you think of what you heard?
I didn't hear anything racist.
He told her he wouldn't serve her.
Well, he can say he wouldn't serve you if you come in here barefooted without a shirt on.
But she wasn't barefoot or without a shirt on.
Well, she wasn't dressed right.
What do you mean?
If I was running a place, I'd do the same thing.
You wouldn't let Muslims shop at your store?
I sure wouldn't.
We never expected customers to be so candid.
How do I know you don't have a bomb in there?
Watch what happens this time, when, once again, our Muslim woman is denied service.
This is not right.
And again leaves.
I mean, we reserve the right to not serve.
That's right. That's right. That's, you know, I appreciate saying that. I think that's the first time I've ever seen that.
He not only commends the man behind the counter for his discriminatory behavior, but he gives him the thumbs up, not once, but twice.
Good job.
All right. As he leaves.
Can I talk to you, sir, for a second?
But when I approach,
Sir, we're with ABC News.
there is no thumbs up for me.
We staged a little experiment in there to see how people would react to that kind of attitude.
Yeah, I'm American.
I am an American.
That man took it a bit farther, telling me I'm not an American.
Who's threatened?
Jack DeVideo is a social psychologist at Yale University.
So when we as Americans feel threatened from the outside, we're going to define ourselves in very rigid fashions. Either you're with me, and if you're not really one of me, then you must be somebody else who's against me.
The young woman in our experiment is an actor. But for this woman, discrimination is all too real. Nahaya Javed helped us design our experiment. Although born in Chicago, she says she's constantly characterized by fellow Americans as the enemy.
They always start off with you're a terrorist, Osama lover, towel head, camel jockey, on and on.
While attending college in Texas, she says she continually suffered verbal abuse and has even been physically attacked just because she's Muslim.
They assume I'm not from here, and if I tell them I'm American, they're like, no, you're not. Just because you were born here doesn't make you American. And I'm like, so what makes you American?
It's a daily battle.
And I don't feel like living in America, I should have to fight this battle.
Meanwhile, back at the bakery, our actor is at it again.
But how do I know you're not a terrorist? Terrorists look like you.
But this time the customers are sympathizing with the Muslim woman.
Right, I know, but can you blame me?
Yeah, I can't blame you, actually.
Why? What's the problem?
Hey, we'll get out of here. You need to go yourself, actually, what you need to do.
Okay, sir. I'm a good American, all right? We're at war with you.
My dad's a better. Go yourself.
So is mine.
And he's not the only one who walks out in anger.
Excuse me?
She's an American.
No, you're a bad American.
Time and again, people speak out with their pocketbooks.
You murdered a couple of customers, just so you know.
But look what happens when this man threatens to leave.
You're not a good American, sir.
I am a good American. My son just came back from serving in the Army for over a year in Iraq, and that has nothing to do with her right.
I understand, and I hear what you're saying, but
I can't believe you would be so discriminatory. I'm deeply offended by that.
I'm sorry to offend you, sir, but I've got to live with myself.
Seething, the man vows to fight back.
I will let people know this. I've stopped here every time I come by this place, and I'll never stop here again. Why do folks get so upset?
They saw an injustice. It's justice that binds us together. It's justice that makes us a society. Any threat to that kind of sense of justice and fairness undermines the entire system.
No, I'm not.
Perhaps that's why more customers are outraged by our actor's hateful behavior than approve of it.
You're not dressed like an American.
But no one is more persistent than these two young women who can't believe what they're hearing.
Take your jihad, take it back out to the parking lot.
Excuse me?
I mean, I gotta protect my customers, okay?
You're really offensive and disgusting.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to protect
Thank you.
you.
Thank you. You're sick. This is
How do you know? These people are trying to kill Americans.
disgusting. It is my culture. So you're ready to serve me, but you're not ready to serve her.
You're obviously dressed like an American.
Big deal. She's Muslim.
And unlike the others, they don't just leave in anger. They stand their ground.
So you're going to regulate what people wear?
Yes, because I believe that the Korean... No, I'm not.
Can I speak to your manager?
I'm John Quinones with ABC News.
It's only when we catch up with our heroines that they finally let their guards down.
I'm with my friend who's, Muslim, and I've just seen I have people treat them differently. And earlier.
Just watching them stand up for what they believe in touches Professor Davidio.
In a way, they defended America. And I was impressed by that, because they wanted this to be a just society, a just place, a just country.
I'm John Quinones.
And remember this man whose son served in Iraq? He's also moved to tears.
Every person deserves to be treated with respect and dignity, no matter how they're dressed, situation, no matter how they're dressed.
Never have we seen reactions so polarized, from a thumbs up for prejudice to an emphatic thumbs down. Two different Americas, both convinced they're patriotic. At the end of the day, 13 people stood up for the Muslim woman, while 6 sided with the clerk. But the majority of the bystanders, 22, did or said absolutely nothing. That's what's most frightening to Muslims like Nahaya, who was watching our experiment. In fact, so frightening that they often avoid going out by themselves.
It's really sad because I'm old enough to be able to do things by myself. I shouldn't need a chaperone all the time. But that one time that I'm alone and something bad might happen, I'd rather be safe than sorry. Hi, I'm Nahaya.
It's no wonder this young woman was so moved by the people who came forward to protect a stranger who just happens to be Muslim.
Thank you so much for what you did. I wish more people would do these type of things, and
I do too.
it would make my life a lot easier.
I'll go with you.
So, in your notes, 3 things that you found interesting. 2 things that you learned, and then 1 question that you have. Actually, I probably did that backwards. All right, cool. Let's get into groups of 3 and just kind of share those thoughts, and then we'll have a large group discussion. We'll give about 2 minutes for some sharing in small groups. All right. So you can just do it now.
Things you learn in one question. For me, I think are different, very different. Maybe a lot of people are scared to act, and at the same time, I question it's like, it's not just like silent majority. A lot of them actually do the counters, or again, they're just too fun. I think a lot of it, like if you know, when one person walked out of the cab, people walked out there, more of it then.
What's that, right?
Eventually the person would feel
Four, three, two, one. So I'm going to start with the third part, which was what questions did this video bring up for you? So, what questions came up for you as you watched the video? Yes.
What defines being American?
So, what defines being American is a question that came up for you. All right. Other folks, other questions. Yes.
I just kind of was wondering if it would be different if it was in like a bigger city or if it was like a college campus, even if it was just kind of a topic that's passed going up a lot in college.
Yeah.
And so I think like if you're going to like a smaller town, you might get more of like that older generation that has these strong views about different cultures and races compared to like college age kids.
Okay.
And so I'd like to see the difference.
Yeah, so that's a question. Would it be different, college-age kids versus old folks, big town versus small town?
Yeah, I was almost thinking like a city or like a place that has a lot of different racial groups in it versus like a Latino or something.
All right, cool. So places that have diversity, I'll give you a chance to respond. Yes.
Like what if like as Christians we had something that like, people could see that knew we were Christians and like how we would be treated in like a different culture.
Okay. So might this play out for us in a different culture? Ron, and I'll take you next.
I was doing the same thing like you were saying, like what would happen if we were and Muslim country and make a woman look what does that look like? No, the opposite like
Yeah. Yeah. What does that look like? Yes.
Just kind of like what would I do in that situation? Like I was put in that situation like I'm thinking for them what would I do? Like would I do anything that I passed me? Would I say something? What would I do?
What would you do? Right? What would you do? Yes.
Cool. It said 22 people didn't do anything.
Yep.
I guess my question was, is that the silent majority agreeing with him, or are they just too scared to act because of the social constraints where no one's doing anything?
That's an interesting question, right? So the 22 who didn't say or do anything, was that because they agreed with him, or do they just not know what to do? What are your suspicions? Yes.
Well, not saying anything doesn't mean you're essentially agreeing with him.
So not saying anything, is that essentially saying you agree with it? That's a great question. I'll answer it like this. Anyone ever been, yeah, go ahead, Ron.
I feel like not saying anything would be kind of agreeing with what the person is doing. Like if you're at the site, something is happening and you don't say nothing.
Yep. Yep, and I want to clear up that London fog for you, right? So you said you feel like it might be, right? So I want to clear up the London fog. It is not saying something. Is it possibly agreeing with it? This is the way I'll address it. Anyone ever done student government stuff? Anyone? Okay. So anyone ever been on a club or something where you had to vote for things, right? So maybe it was a scouting troop of some sort or some kind of, or raise your hand high if you've been in a situation where you've had to use voting as a way of making a decision, right? Okay, cool. So if I want something to pass, and I think it's a good idea, how in a voting process. So first of all, voting requires what? What is it? What requires when not consensus building, but voting requires what to be a winner? What do you have to be a winner? Majority, which is what? So if we have 100%, that would be what percentage? 51%. All I need is 51% to be the winner. So if I like this thing, what do I say in the vote? I agree. Yay, yes, I agree. That's what we say, right? If I don't like the vote, I think it's the dumbest thing they ever came up with, then how do I respond? I say nay, no, no, right? But what if I have a so-called conflict of interest, right? So in some way, if I make this decision, it benefits me, or, you know, I really just don't want to be a part of this process. What then do I say? I abstain. So abstain means do not put it in the record that my vote that I'm voting. As a matter of fact, put in the record that I'm not voting at all, right? So you have yes, no, abstention. And what's the fourth way that you make a decision using Robert's Rules of Order? Because all of that is based on Robert's Rules of Order, right? So what's the fourth way you can make a decision? By saying nothing. So when you say nothing, you are going along with whatever is happening, right? So that's why I get frustrated with people who, you know, protest it, but I ask, did you vote? And they go, no, don't do it. That's dumb, right? So if you didn't participate and you could, and now you got something to say about it, that's goofy, right? So back to your initial question. The person who was the negative person, who was those negative 6 people, Did the 22 agree with them? Or did the 22 not know what to say? What do you think the -6, the 6s took from that silence? What's that? Agreement. Right? So whatever was going on with the 22, the 6 didn't know, but he was like, look, nobody's saying anything, so they must agree with, so I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep doing it. The 13, we got to love them. Love the 13, right? They stand up for stuff. But there are some very interesting things that I hope that you notice about the 13s. What caused them to stand up when other people wouldn't? What did you notice? Yes.
I saw a correlation with like people from military backgrounds. I heard a couple people talk about people in service where that's not what our troops stand for and that's understood and that's not what our military is about. Like, these people aren't all the enemy. This isn't like something we stand for, so we're not going to let that happen.
Yeah, they had emotional attachment to that situation, right? So they had so they had a loved one that served. They had a loved one who did some other things. I'll get you in just a second. Let me take your hand.
Yeah, I was just going to say they had like some sort of connection to somebody who would be affected by it.
They had a connection. Was that person there? Maybe one time, but for most of those two situations where I heard people talk about the military, the other person they're talking about wasn't present, right? So they had this attachment. Yes.
I also noticed that they didn't necessarily speak up until he asked them a question like, do you think I should save her or should I do this?
So until they were engaged in either blatantly saying, I agree with all this crazy stuff that's going on, right? They didn't speak. What else did you also notice? You saw it with the two young ladies. What did you notice there? Yeah.
That
Yeah, so not only did she have a friend who was a Muslim, but there were two people there. So now she's got, wait a minute, is that why Jesus sent his disciples off in twos? Because what? What do you got built into this teamwork? You got backup, right? You got somebody to support what you're saying. So oftentimes these 22s are feeling isolated. They're not connected with anybody. So they're like, oh, the risk is too high. But when you have your friend, you're like, no, the risk isn't too high. I got support right here, right? Or I have emotional support. I know somebody who this is negatively affected, right? So along those lines, this idea of the -6s and 22. How would you categorize the -6s? Like, what words would you use to describe? Yes. Old. All right. So in this particular video, they were old. What other words would you use to describe them? Yes. White. Okay. Cool. They were male. Most of them were males that they showed in the film. What else? What other words would you use to describe them? Okay, I wasn't looking at his cash, but he looked wealthy. Okay, cool. One word I would use for those folks is a bigot. That the -6s were bigots, right? Have you ever heard that word before? Right? So what have other people? How have other people used that word, bigot? Yes. So ignorance, right? And I want to tell you that that's how I typically talked about bigotry or bigots, right? So bigotry, bigot. So bigotry, the act of being a bigot, right? So, no, I typically would say that too, that bigots are ignorant. Until I actually started talking to and working with bigots. I found out as a matter of fact, they know a lot of stuff. And when I would interact with bigots, since I thought that they were lacking in knowledge, I would interact with the bigot and say, no, bigot, that's wrong. What you're saying is wrong. Here are the statistics. On these dates, this is what happened. These are some facts. These are some folks that I know. And as I was saying that to bigots, guess what the bigots did? They dug in even deeper. And they would say, you know what, I don't care, those statistics are wrong, it's fake news, it's, all this kind of stuff. They hit me with all this stuff. But I would just keep coming and keep coming until the bigot would get so frustrated that they would say, Andre, I don't care what you say. This is how I feel. Oh, bigotry is not about knowledge. It's about an emotion. It's about a feeling, right? And so when we talk about this idea, we have to recognize that bigotry is an emotional state. So no matter how much logic you throw at bigotry, no matter how many PowerPoints or Excel spreadsheets you give a bigot about their information, it doesn't change their heart. So what does change hearts? What does change an emotion? Anybody ever had a friend that had the blues? Raise your hand high if they had the blues. Sad, broken heart, just things not going well. I'm not talking about clinical depression. That's a whole different kind of thing. I'm talking about just the blues, right? So when you have a friend that has the blues, how do you help them? What do you do to help your friend with the blues? You cheer them up. So how do you do that? So give me an example of how you've done that with one of your friends.
Yeah. For me, I conquered and asked her how she was doing and gave her kind of a little kick and say, hey, I'm here for you.
Yeah. So you talk to them, you reach out to them. My brother's house just burned down over the weekend, right? Can't get to Atlanta. But I call that dude every day. I'm checking on him on Facebook. How you doing, man? You need anything? What's going on? He's like, I don't know. We're going to need some stuff. We just don't need it yet because, blah, blah, blah. So I reach out to him on a regular basis. How else do you help a friend with the blues?
There's some kind of experience. Like take them out for ice cream or go and see a fun movie.
Yeah, you take them out. You get them close to you. You go do something, right? Get them to not think about themselves, but to think about other things. Right? Bake them cookies, take them, get a flower, or all these kinds of things. And ultimately, what are you demonstrating to them? How much you love them. Wait a minute, Andre. Are you suggesting that to help a bigot, we have to love them? Yes, I am suggesting that. That you have to love them, right? And we can talk about the three forms of love, being philos, which is brotherly love, affection that you would have for a brother or a sister, where we get the word Philadelphia, right? And then there is eros, which is where we get the word erotic, self-love, right? Self-pleasing kind of love. And then there is agape, which is the idea that I love you because you exist. You don't have to do anything, you don't have to be anything, but exist. And I have to give you that respect and dignity, right? So we have to do those things, but that's the kind of love that we have to give bigots, which means that we tether ourselves to bigoted people. I have two Great Danes, Benson and Ozzy. And when we go walking and it's just us on the street, I can let the tether be very long, right? Now, my dogs are rescue dogs. We got them from a shelter, and they have some idiosyncrasies that I have to be mindful of, right? But so when I see other dogs, what do you think I do with my I cinch it in, right? So I bring in the tether really close, right? So that I have close control. When we're interacting with bigots, typically what good people say is, I can't be around those people, so I will cut them off. Because they're bad actors, and I can't be around bad actors. If my dogs are acting bad, and I'm not trying to compare human beings with dogs, but I want you to work with this metaphor for me, right? But if I cut my tether from my dog, can I now be held responsible for what my dog is? I possibly could be, but can I control my dog now that I've cut the tether? Not as well as I could when we were connected, right? And so those family members who tell bad jokes, who have mindsets that aren't congruent with what you're learning in school and the way that you're experiencing the world, don't cut them off. Those frenemies on Facebook, as long as they're not, trying to be hurtful to you, but they may just disagree with you, keep them, because you need to be tethered to them, right? Which then leads us to this idea of prejudice. And prejudice is simply frozen thought patterns, frozen mindsets, right? So, how do you get someone, and this is a tool you will use as a classroom teacher. This is going to be so helpful, because when I figured this out, I was like, cool. So one of the things that I've stopped doing in life is I stopped talking to teenagers. Between even the kind of the 20s, so between the ages of 12 and 16 and a half. When they get 17, they start getting some more sense. But 16 and a half, I don't talk to teenagers. It's a waste of my time to talk to them, right? Because they're usually, their thumbs are going, or they got something in their ears, and they're off in their own little world. And so, trying to have a conversation with them, is particularly like in cars and vehicles, it's just a waste. It's a waste of time. But what I have started doing with my teenagers is I ask questions. And I keep coming with the questions. So ultimately, they start going, will you stop asking me questions? Oh, so you did hear me. You did hear me. And you've seen this play out on all kinds of law shows, right? So, when I was a kid, there was a show called Perry Mason that was on. And Perry was like this cool dude. And he'd walk into the courtroom, and like the theme song would come on, da-da-da-da. He'd just be like, yeah, what's up? And then everybody's like, oh, it's Perry, all this kind of stuff. And so he goes to the courtroom, and he had discovered something through his research in the deposition. So he's got a copy of the deposition. He's bringing it to the court, and he asked the judge. He said, "Judge, can I approach the witness?" And the witness is sitting there, and Perry opens up his little file. Then he says, "Witness, is it true that A, B, C, D, E, F, G?" And the witness goes, "Oh my goodness, how did you know that?" And then all of a sudden the court, erupts and like, ah, and everybody's like, ah. And the judge is like, order in my court, order in my court. And the other attorney says, I object. And the judge says, objection sustained, which means that he agrees with the other thing, and they're going to throw that question out. So the judge says, strike Perry's question from the record. He never asked the question. We're throwing that out. And Perry says, that's okay, Judge. Thank you. I'll retract it. So he retracts the question. Now, why is this top-notch attorney asking a question that he knows is going to get thrown out of court? Why is he asking the question? Because he's going to make the jury think about it. So one of the things to help prejudice people is to ask questions. You start asking prejudiced people, where did they get their information from? It shuts them down. They start melting deep. You know, they don't know how to operate. Dad, is there another news station that gives a different point of view on the same thing? Oh, I don't know. What book did you read this thing out of? I was at a school, and a kid, probably about 8th grade, it's like racism. You know, they didn't start with the Confederate flag. Racism with the Confederate flag wasn't started until the 1980s. That's what he says to me. I said, really? He said, yes. I said, what book did you get that from? Now, this kid is good. He was like, I got it from a book called The Confederate Life of the Flag. I said, really? I said, what library did you get that from? He said, I got that from Dakota County Library. I said, oh, okay, great. I said, let's look it up on your phone. So we got to look it up on the phone. And guess what? There was no book called, this kid was good. He was up on his feet, right? He made all this stuff up, right? So his idea of the racism and the Confederate flag is based on a falsehood. And the funny thing is, all you have to do is ask the question of a prejudiced person and walk away. You don't have to wait for the answers. You don't have to engage in the answer. And then lastly, we have to recognize that discrimination is actually the sum total of these first two. It is a behavior, right? And this is all coming from our, what? Do you remember what CBT was? Cognitive behavior therapy, right? Yep, therapy, right? So now let's come back to these 22. I would suggest that the 22 are not bad people, that oftentimes they are not in support of the 6, but they don't know how to be a 13. Now, how many of you have been set on fire? Either by somebody else or by yourself, right? We used to play with fire all the time. We did this thing with a lighter, and you would put the lighter in your hand. Anybody ever done that? You put the lighter gas in your hand, and then you light it like that. We thought that was cool as kids. Yeah, it was crazy, right? So none of you have been set on fire. But do any of you know, oh, you have been, okay, what you do? Oh my goodness, oh, was that scary?
It was more shocking.
More shocking, like, yeah. Yep, this is my 3rd set of eyebrows, just similar thing, right? So I was, so as intelligent as I am in this space, I'm not this way in the world, right? So I was going to burn some sticks in my yard. So we had pine. So we had a bunch of pine trees, and I trimmed the thing from the pine tree, made a little stack. And then I said, you know what? This pine is going to burn pretty good, but I need to do it a little quicker. So I poured gasoline on it, right? So I got this big brush pile, like this big. I pour a little gasoline on it, and I'm like, okay, that'll be cool. And so, I said, well, let me let the gasoline soak in a little bit, and then I'll come back, right? So I came back, and I had my matches, and I struck my matches, and I threw the matches onto the top of the fire. What I didn't realize is that gasoline is obviously a liquid. Gravity does what to liquids? Pulls it down to the ground, right? So all the gasoline was on the ground. So when I lit the match, the gasoline that was on the ground swept up like a mushroom cloud from under the fire. And I'm standing like in the fire, like ah, so at any rate, but do you know what you're supposed to do when you're on fire? Stop, drop, and roll. But you've never been on fire. How do you know that? You know that because you practice it, right? And so these 22 haven't practiced how to be engaging in those kinds of ways. And so we need to teach people how to do that. So there's that. So there's this idea that cognitive behavior therapy, now, who said that they will take care of discrimination? What entity said that they will take care of discrimination? I'll give you a hint. And who runs or responsible, makes the Civil Rights Act? The government, right? Oh. Right? So the government said through the 64, through the 1970s, Title IX, through the ADA, so forth and so on, blah, blah, blah. They'll take care of this discrimination stuff. Can the government regulate how someone thinks? Can the government say you need to think like this? No, they don't regulate that. Do they regulate how people feel? They don't regulate that. So we got an equation where the government will deal with the resolution, but whose responsibility is to deal with these two things? If the government doesn't deal with those, who deals with these? Educators. We do. And that we is in our personal lives, in our professional lives, all sorts of stuff. If we don't call people on these things, if we don't love people, and we don't get them to think, then we'll continue to have discrimination. Okay? So that's important. I want to talk about these other two concepts before we go. And many of you have seen this video before. I was trying to show it the other day, but ran out of time. So we'll just watch this really quick. Outside of this other stuff, my core question is, when she gets to wherever she's going, do you think she'll be compelled to give 100% of her best? Why do you say no?
Because she's uncomfortable and probably not enjoying being catcalled on her way that she's going. And then to have people follow you and laugh at you and continue to talk to you like that is just kind of like a scary, uncomfortable thing.
Yep.
And you don't know what they're going to do.
You don't know what they're going to do. It's unpredictable situations. Is it taking any psychic energy? Do you think she was expending any psychic energy there? Meaning her mind is working. Yeah.
She looked, especially by the end, she just looked exhausted, like she was just ready to be done because it's tiring it would be tiring to have to go through that all day.
Yeah. You know, it's so funny. As a guy, I've never experienced that. I mean, sometimes I was like, it'd be nice to be followed, right? That's why we thought you were cute, right? No, that's not what I'm thinking. It's never happened to me. Never happened. Why do you think that is? Was that comment? Were they really trying to get her attention? I mean, were they really trying to have? Were they trying to find their soulmate? No. Right? Were they lifting up her humanity? I would suggest not. So this is what I'll leave you with these two. Is that did you see anything in there that was illegal? There was nothing in that was illegal. Right? There's nothing that was illegal. So microinequities are these things that are not illegal. So it is not technically discrimination. But was she being lifted up as a human being through that interaction? No. Right? And it was their perceived power that they were trying to exert over her. Right? So there's a relationship between microinequities and discretionary effort. So the more microinequities, the more of those little negative things that happen, my discretionary effort goes down. Discretionary, again, meaning I can use it at my disposal. So my discretionary effort goes down. We'll talk more about this idea of implicit bias. Implicit bias really is this idea that people say, I have the can't help it. Right? So, I didn't know I grew up in this area or that area and I can't help it. Another way to talk about that is this idea of a blind spot. Your car has blind spots. How often can you use the excuse that you didn't know they were there? Can you crash into something that, I didn't know it was there? Will the insurance company keep taking that as an excuse? No, they won't, right? Because at some point they want you to have cognitive control. So you are accountable for the things that you think, the things that you do, the things that you say, the way that you interact with the world. You ultimately are accountable. And kind of in religious terms, we really talk about this idea that everyone at some point will have to face the maker and talk about their own stuff, right? So those are important things. We'll talk about the brain and brain development on Monday. Have a great day. Thank you so much for a great class.
I'll see you.
Thank you. The classes just go so fast. I hope you feel like they go fast. This dude just talks forever.
You're good.
Yeah. Oh, all right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You too, man. You have to phone on the screen.
Why would it work for everyone with disability at home? It's not last time. It's supposed to, if it wasn't.
It might be wrong, it might be from last year, because why would we do it later than
Yeah, I might just know that I'll be gone the Monday we come back from spring break.
Okay.
So I will not be class,
Where-
so I'll give the notice.
Yeah, where will you be?
My flight doesn't last until middle.
Oh, okay.
So I'll be.
Cool. You
Yeah.
come back.
Yeah.
Are you going any place special?
Just Florida.
Oh, just Florida.
Just Florida.
Just Florida. Okay, I better not see you in any videos. You know what I'm saying?
I'm going to Fort Myers with my family. No videos will be taken.
No, I do not want to see. I'm like, guess what Bethel's doing? Oh my goodness.
Is this just not been updated about the final?
Yeah, it has been.
So would it be probably maybe that's Thursday and Friday, so.
Yeah, so I think it's, today is a Wednesday, it's supposed to be on a Thursday.
Okay, our classes, but there's 2 sections, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Would it be the same time Thursday?
I don't know, I'll find out.
Because I have a final during that time on Thursday.
Okay. Well, you know I'm gonna work with you. I'm not gonna leave you hanging out there like.
No, my class is more important than all other classes.
Because if it was during that time, then I would probably, that final actually is.
Which is it?
It's the letter student ed sec.
Oh, Ed Psych, isn't that taught by that guy?
That's the other ed psych is Sean.
That Sean guy?
Yeah, he does
Brian?
not the elementary one. He
Oh,
does the secondary. Yeah, it's like, we have the elementary one.
Yeah, it's ed sec at 2:35 on the whole thing. So,
I don't know.
there's 2 sections.
Yeah,